Democracy Now! Is underwritten by the French Broad Food Co-op, a grocery store focusing more on people than profit by providing living wages, supporting local farmers, and being community-owned. Citizens have a voice in how the co-op functions. Everyone can shop, and anyone can join.
This morning, the blues walking like a man. Woke up this morning, the blues walking like a man. Worry blues, give me your.
You're listening to WPVM LP, 103.7, Asheville.
Good morning. You're listening to the Blaine's World show. We're heard each Wednesday here on the new WPVM LP in Asheville, North Carolina. You can also listen online at WPVMFM.org. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and each week we focus on the Asheville theater scene as well as on positive news and information about people and organizations in the Asheville area. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my first guest, River Guerguerian. Welcome aboard, River.
Oh, good morning. Thank you.
As you mentioned, that River is the artistic director of the Asheville Percussion Festival. He's also director of Asheville Rhythm, and he draws upon a richly diverse experiences to play across a remarkable span of musical genres and traditions, both obscure and mainstream. As a highly regarded studio musician, River has recorded on over 200 albums and film soundtracks. He has performed with groups in such as the BCC Symphony Orchestra, New Mexico Music Concert, Singing Bowls Ensemble, a whole bunch of other things. I've even heard you, River, at a private house party, and You're just great.
Thank you.
And River, the question I always am curious about, especially with musicians, is how do you get into the field?
So I think music got me, first of all. And when I was a toddler, I used to tap around and just play on everything and so on and so forth. And my parents really figured out that they just need to get me some drums, so they got me some hand drums when I was about 7 years old or so. And then I got into more Western drums when I was about 9. By the time I was about 11 or 12, I knew it was going to be my life's devotion. I went to conservatory. I went to a music school, and I studied. When I got there and I was living in New York City, I got into all kinds of music. It was amazing living in a city where you're surrounded by masters all the time, It's very inspiring, and it's very humbling, too. And then I've been doing it on all different kinds of levels my whole life. And then when I moved here 20 years ago, Asheville's an interesting place. Asheville forces you to be the person you're supposed to be and do what you're supposed to do. And I feel like that's what's been happening here for the last 20 years.
And you were lucky because you told the story of your parents. And I remember when I would bang on stuff, I get hit over the head, So it's just, the difference. But in terms of playing the drums, is that what you focus on? Or did you play other instruments as well?
Yeah, I play all kinds of percussion instruments. It's a huge family. It's a huge variety of everything from, the kettle drums that you might hear in an orchestra, and you have marimbas and vibraphones that you could play, whether it's classical music or jazz music. You have all kinds of indigenous drums from different parts of the world and different cultures of the world, and they're all radically different. And then within that, I play some piano, I could play some guitar and some bass, I could play some flute, a few things here and there. I teach a music program at the Odyssey School, so it's good to know many instruments. And but at the heart, I'm kind of like a composer that percussion is my medium. I think of it that way, as opposed to somebody who's just always rat-a-tat-a-tatting sometimes. Even though I could do that, I try to put some kind of intention to what I'm doing.
Now, when you're playing, how do you feel about other people joining in or, starting to play drums, or we'll show about some of the stuff you have? Do you encourage that?
Oh, there's different levels, I think, of there's playing for yourself, which is your practice. And I think for me, that's like the crucial, that's like the nucleus of everything I do. Then is the next level of rehearsing and jamming with people and so on. And then you go on stage or in a recording session, and then you could either just do a straight up pre-chorus composed, everything is through composed, like every single note and nuance is done. Or there's the kind of performances, and I've been on stage, you know, in front of 1,000 people, and you just met the person 5 minutes ago, and you make, you know, amazing music. So, and I love that part of it too, you know.
And one of the things I love also about some of the stuff you do, River,
Mhm.
is that you always come with more than one drum. I mentioned I had the privilege of seeing you at a house party a couple of years ago, and you just don't bring like one little drum with you. You bring a couple. Even to the studio, I'm just amazed. You brought how many with you today?
Just 4.
Just 4.
Yeah.
Could you show again for I guess for the folks on Facebook Live, they'll be able to see it. For others, we'll have to describe it. But this first drum is what?
This is it's a family of frame drums. So for a frame drum, if you could see it on the camera, it's a drum that's wider. So this is 22 inches by 5 inches deep, as opposed to a regular goblet-shaped drum or barrel-shaped drums. And actually, there's more variety of these kind of drums in the world than anything else. They're just not found so much in pop culture. So I could play held up. So in Morocco, they might play a rhythm, and they might look like and sound like this. You know, holding it up this way. If you go to a similar drum like this, if you go to Western Asia or Turkey or Northern Africa, they might play it on their lap like this, as you could see up there. With one hand, you could use these snapping techniques up here, and then I could do similar things. So if I play a rhythm, let's play rhythm in 7, for example, right? So it's just 2 plus 2 plus 3. 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 duku duku taka ta duku duku paka ta duku duku taka ta duku duku paka ta duku duku paka ta duku duku paka ta duku duku paka ta duku duku paka. Duku duku taka ta duku duku paka ta duku duku taka ta duku duku paka ta duku.
By the way, how do you learn even the rhythm, or how do you even learn to start doing that?
Woo!
You just do it?
Lots of things. It's a little bit of just doing, a little bit of watching. You know, I traveled around the world. You know, in my day, I've been to about 30 different countries, and I observe and I see how they do things. I study with masters. I humble myself. I'm always learning. You know, the instrument, like the drum. If I get specific with the drum is my biggest teacher itself. You know, and it's an amazing reflection. It's a clear, shiny reflection. You know, so everything you put into it, you get out of it. And you have to work with it. It's a relationship, you know.
How many drums do you have?
In my studio, I have hundreds of drums. Hundreds, and you know, like I might have, you know, probably like 70 to 80 hand drums and stuff like that. I have about a dozen singing bowls. I have about another 15 gongs or so. I have all kinds of, you know, when I show up to a recording session, they go, here's that guy with a box of tings and things. You know, I have this box that has all these, like, accoutrements that make sounds and adds little sizzly things to, like, even like a pop track, and I go in there and it just adds this extra sheen to this pop track, for example. And I play drum sets and drum kits and have you know, xylophones and marimba and yeah, lots of things.
Now, do you ever do traditional drums?
Oh yeah, I mean that's my bread and butter for a lot I do. People don't always see that on stage, but in the recording sessions, I do all kinds of, you know, everything from jazz music to, there's a lot of indie rock around here, a lot of working with a lot of songwriters, and sometimes we'll take like a traditional sounding song, you know, and like what can add that different color, what can add that different texture, you know, how can we change the canvas? And usually sometimes the percussion can do that, you know, because it's people hear that like almost right away. You don't have to be no music theory so heavy to hear that you're going from a cymbal to a drum or to a brush or a shaker and so on. So I might take familiar Americanized beats but play them on different instruments and add a different flavor.
That's probably exciting for you and the musicians as well.
Yeah, because so much of music people don't realize, like, you know, I guess from the 50s and 60s to what it is now, so much of the beat is like, and every variation of that, whether it's country or hard rock or everything in between, it all has that backbeat on 2 and 4, and I like to switch that up sometimes.
Do you have a preference as to what kind of music you like?
I really like a lot of kinds of music. It depends on the hour, the time of the day, the week, what mood I'm in. But a lot of times, believe it or not, it's not fast drumming music. When I go home at night or wake up in the morning, sometimes I like something a little bit more chill, a little bit more to calm myself, you know, because sometimes I've had a full day of drumming or what. I mean, sometimes I'm playing for hours and hours a day, you know. So I try to empty out more on my free time.
You mentioned off the air your kids, for example.
Yeah.
Do they ever get tired of hearing you?
You know, they've all heard it as, you know, in the womb, for example. So I always play to my kids in the womb as a healing thing. I try to, I try to think, well, what does a fetus need? You know, what kind of sounds and vibrations will really help it? And then it's also to get them used to it. Like, they're going to have to deal with a lifetime of this dude, playing drums, and they're pretty good about it. If I start tapping on them and stuff like that, they don't like. And I have drums all over the house, and they tap. We don't. You mentioned your parents used to like get upset if you tapped around. Like, I don't have that policy in my house. If you're at dinner and you want to tap, tap on the silverware or the whatever. It's like, go ahead, knock yourself out. It's all good.
Do they play instruments?
Yeah, they all three of them can hold the rhythm down on drums, and my youngest one right now is really into the ukulele, drum set, and piano, and she's a little bit of a whiz that way, and she just picks up anything and does it.
You mentioned holding a rhythm. I'm just curious, are there any people who can't hold a rhythm?
Well, first of all, we all have rhythm inside of us, and it's not always metronomic. It's not always like like on the second hand, but some people are wired more to go into not just pulses but subdivisions of pulses. So if you have a pulse here, for example, I could go ta 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 ta, or three ta 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 ta. And I, in my teaching practice, I help people who, the older they get, the little harder it is to train them to be in rhythm. But it's all about with understanding the pulses in your body and getting it into your body, like out in your feet. So it's not just in your head. And getting it into the physical body, I think, is the way to help people bring out their own natural rhythm. And some people, they don't need to play with a metronome. They don't need to sound like a click track, but they have their own groove, And I try to help people get into their own groove sometimes.
It's interesting listening to you, too. You said you played the trumpet, too, or have played the trumpet?
I have played it, yeah, in the past.
Because I'm listening to you, what was it, double tonguing and triple tonguing?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm listening to you.
That's the same.
As a kid, that's what I had to do.
Right. When you did triple tongue, you went ta-ka-ta, right? And then I figured out the tongue is ta, is forward, ka is back, ta. But it's weird because you go front, back, so ta-ka-ta, 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 ta-ka-ta. Yeah, and if you do 16th notes, it's going ta-ka-ta, 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 ta-ka-ta.
But I'm listening to you, and it's just amazing. He says, boy, I remember that sound. And
That's
I didn't
cool.
realize it, but I see the similarity. What about also the fact that you work with people of different ages, so you can learn this stuff at any age?
Yeah, I mean, I have, I teach people from 5 to 95, really. And it's a beautiful thing when you see somebody come in who's 82 years old and says, I've always wanted to play the drum, but this, or my father said I couldn't do it because of this or that. I'm like, let's do it, Like, it's so much better than other things you could be doing right now. And it's really helpful, and there's so much studies about, brain development and synapses happening in between the right side and the left side of your brains and how it's coming out into your hands. And I think the older we get, those kinds of things are proven to be a little bit more healthier than just sitting there and doing crossword puzzles,
How do you feel about the drum circle in Nashville?
Oh, I feel great about it. I think it's a wonderful thing that in the heart of our city, every Friday night, for about 5 hours, people come, once again, multi-generational, multiracial, come in there and just start having a good time, creating rhythm, getting together, communing together, breathing together, singing together, dancing together. I mean, I travel all over the world. I've been to most big cities around the world. That's pretty rare. So, like, rhythm is in the DNA. It's in the fabric of our society here, and I think it's great. You could say this or that, or musically it's this or that. It's like, well, it's not about that. If you want to go see a concert, go to the concert hall a block down, or go to the music hall, or whatever it is.
What was cool, as you said, we used to have friends in their 80s. And the guy would come every Friday night to the drum circle. He bought a drum, and he just do his thing, and he loved it.
Yeah.
It's such a cool thing.
And you could be an introvert and anonymous. You could just show up with your drum, kind of sneak in there, play a little bit, 20 minutes, 2 hours, whatever it is, and then just walk up and go. If you don't have to like get involved and be super extroverted that way, but you could really be quiet.
Well, it's cool about it too. The very first time I ever went when we were in Nashville is then to just get up and start dancing. And who would have thunk to drums you could dance?
Yeah.
But people do.
Oh yeah. And I've noticed, and a lot of the tourists who come, they don't necessarily always have a drum or whatever, but they're sitting around, they're watching, and then they watch like the actual, everybody gets their actual freak on, And then the tourists look around and says, nobody knows me here. I'm just going to put my Asheville freak on too and do my wild dance, and nobody's going to give me a hard time for it, and I could just go, and that's it. But I've had such a fulfilling time.
And then what's amazing, so many of them are not necessarily tourists, but residents.
Yeah.
They go out and buy drums and start joining in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as far as a lifelong endeavor, even if you just play it once a week or once a month, I think it's so beneficial in so many ways.
River, since you brought them, let's just talk about some of the other drums you have with you.
Yeah, this is also a frame drum. This one is only 9 inches wide, as opposed to the other one, which was 3 times as wide. And then this is 3 inches deep, and it's a Southern Indian drum called a kanjira, and it's really loose head. So by squeezing the head, if you could see, I get the different pitches.
I noticed when you start drumming, you like singing along too.
Yeah, I like to vocalize. I like to vocalize the rhythm sometimes, and then so that people could really understand what's happening. For example, this is a tambourine. You see all this in the ancient world, and especially like in Middle Eastern times, Mediterranean times. It goes about 5,000 or 6,000 years, and it's not a tambourine as how we see it, in pop music, but it has a skin on it, and I could play my doom this way, my tex and my cause this way on the edge, and my pa is the dry sound this way. So if I do like a melody rhythm, doom doom ticka tech doom ticka pa ticka doom doom ticka tech doom ticka pa ticka ticka doom ticka tech doom ticka doom doom ticka pa doom ticka. Then I could play on the cymbals on the edge, same rhythm, doom doom ticka tech doom ticka pa ticka doom doom ticka tech doom ticka tech.
Watching you reminds me of the guys who play like 17 instruments at one time. Have you ever seen those guys?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And doing
Exactly.
some harmonica or something like
Exactly.
that. How many can you play at one time?
Well, I have this, over the years I've developed this hybrid drum setup. So when I really bring a lot of stuff out and I go a few hours to a gig, I might have this thing where I have part of a traditional drum set on my right side. I have these different hand drums that I've mounted over stands and people have built for me over the years. I have a bunch of cymbals, and then I have a whole set of Asian gongs behind me. And sometimes I like to get all my limbs going. I don't play that much electronic music. I know electronics in the sense of recording and getting really good mic techniques and editing stuff and making acoustically generated instruments sound like electronic sometimes. But I've really over the years just got into how to use all my 4 limbs at the same time, and not just like a regular drummers, but think of each limb as almost a person creating their own sonic voice and texture in the canvas.
So sometimes are you using your feet sometimes?
Oh, yeah,
too?
all the time. Because I'm hearing subdivisions. So, for example, if I'm always feeling that I'm just beating my chest not like this, if the person hears that, it's a little bit better, because if I play a rhythm over it, you might not hear all the subdivisions like doom, ta, ta, doom, ta, ticka, doom, ta. That's very syncopated rhythm. And without the pulse, doom, ta, 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 doom, ta, doom. And adding it, or whatever part of the pulse or subdivision I want, just helps that part of the brain that wants to space out I'm going to anchor you with this pulse. Then I'll take it out there and play all these syncopations.
So are your feet going also, though?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, all the time. I was just imitating that with my chest as if it was my foot, because I don't have my bass drum with me.
But I can see that.
Oh, yeah.
All right, tell real quickly the story years ago. I was at Les Miserables.
Oh, yeah.
Best seats I ever had, first row center. And really getting into River. I started beating with my feet, you
Oh,
know. And at the theater at the time, it was very close to the pit. And some guy from the pit grabs my foot and says, "Hey, buddy, saying, you can't be doing that. Just as you're doing, I'm just getting into it."
Yeah, exactly. Well, they tell that to people in orchestra sometimes. They would tell us, "Okay, you're not allowed to tap your foot," and I understand why, because if everybody started tapping their foot, it wouldn't be exactly the same, and it would make a cacophonous sound, perhaps. But I think you have to feel the rhythm in the lower part of your body sometimes, because that's what instills dance. Like, for example, if you're playing dance music, if you're playing in a venue where it's dance-oriented, whether it's playing for a party somewhere, or it's a nightclub or a huge arena, if you're not feeling the dance, how the heck can you make somebody else dance? You know, if you're not feeling the joke, you're not going to make somebody else laugh. And whatever you have to be what you want to be to spread that vibration or intention out there, right? So we have to include that part of our body in there. And if we disassociate from that, I think then we lose, you know.
Remember, before we talk about the upcoming festival you're going to be in, I think you have one other
Oh
instrument
yeah,
you want to share
I
with
brought
us.
my hand pan, which is really works nice for the radio, because it's very percussive and it's also melodic. Let's see.
You can say it
Around
great.
here.
Yeah, perfect.
Dun dun dun. It looks like a big flying saucer. Two
Okay.
big domes.
By the way, if any of your listeners are listening to this, can't see all the drums, feel free to check back on Facebook Live at the radio station Facebook page, and you can see previous broadcasts, because just to see these drums are just amazing.
Yes.
And so this last one is...
It's a hand pan made by Soraz Hand Pans, actually one of the better makers in the world. There's only a few really good makers in the world. Let's see, are you getting that out there?
Sounds it, yeah.
So that's the low note, and that's the nip. This has a triple nipple, the dome in here.
It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Let me ask you,
Yes.
on playing that, can you read music and play that?
Sure.
Like you could play a regular song?
You
using
well,
that?
yeah. These are very different. You can't fit a whole chromatic scale in here. You could just have one. You could just have about 8 different pitches, 7 different pitches, and you could have one scale. So actually, I use multiple drums to get like a full range, and it's pretty rare. The instrument is only about 15 years old, so that's short if you think of like human instruments. So it's all being developed, and each drum is made with a different scale. So you'd have to do some transcribing before you could just sight read something.
Have you ever made any drums?
Yeah, I've made a bunch of different drums in my life, different hoop drums. I've helped people make some djembe drums, ashiko drums, and I like to put things together. But over time, I just let the masters do the drum making, because that could take hours and hours and days.
I was just going to say, and learning to also play 150 drums or whatever, you have enough to keep you busy.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
The
Yeah,
next
for sure.
couple of years. Let me ask you, River, talk a little bit about the upcoming thing you're going to be involved in, and that's the Asheville Percussion Festival. Very exciting event also.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Yes, so this will be our 7th year, and it happens this coming week. On Sunday and Monday, we have about 12 artists that come from different parts of the world and different cultural traditions. And then we have about 50 students who come for the week. And then, so we have this residency program. Basically, the idea is that all these different percussionists with different cultural traditions come together, bring in one composition. We all work on that composition together. It might include all of us or just 4 or 5 of us. And then present it at the concert on Friday evening at Dana Wortham Theater. And that'll be like the big Masters concert. On the Saturday, there's going to be a free day of workshops at the Odyssey Community School. That's Saturday, June the 30th. And then that evening, there's also a more informal concert, but it's at the school. It will be solos and jams and things like that. And then there's a sound meditation that we close off the festival with on Sunday morning, where we use more like gongs and singing bowls. There'll be a cellist, there'll be a bass player, there'll be other things going on. It's like the different side of percussion. People just think, oh, it's just dun da da dun da da dun da da dun, like, you know, rhythm making stuff, but there's that more abstract, ethereal, meditative side. And this year's theme is really excited about it. I don't know if you heard, but it's called Celebrating Women in Rhythm. And so all our headliners are women. There's about 12 of them coming everywhere from Kenya, Puerto Rico, Iran, Turkey, California, and then we have local regional people. We have Jessie, we have Abby the Spoon Lady, we have an Indian dancer, Aparna, who lives locally also. We have Brandy doing a Middle Eastern dance. So it's really, really inspiring this year to see what's happening.
And she mentioned to our listeners two things. One, that I think you check out also this week's Mountain Express. The cover story is all about the festival.
Yeah.
Also, is there a website, for the festival? Do
Yes.
you know it?
It's AshevilleRhythm.org. AshevilleRhythm.org. Or if you just Google Asheville Percussion Festival, it'll come up too.
And she mentioned also a very generous offer from you folks at the Asheville, at the upcoming festival.
Yes.
Is that one listener now, we're going to try this out for the first time, has a chance to get a ticket for a performance of their choice.
Yeah.
And to enter, all you have to do is send an email to WPVMFM.org. That's WPVMFM.org. And just say you want to be in the drawing for a free ticket for an event of your choice, and give it a shot, and we'll announce the winner. We'll send you an email right back.
Cool.
So thank you very much.
That's great.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the offer.
Oh, thank you.
And so when people come to this, will you also be performing?
Usually, because I'm the artistic director, and I through the whole week of rehearsals, I put the pieces together, and I get it, and I end up playing with everybody. But this year, I'm going to take a little bit more of a back seat. I'll just play on like 2 or 3 pieces. We'll see how the week goes, and I really want to let the female percussionists take the center stage for this one. Like I said, there'll be some pieces with like 10, 12 headliners, and it's gonna be a knockout, I think.
Now, how many years have you been doing this?
This is the 7th year. Yeah.
And so what gave you the idea for this?
Originally, the inspiration was just, walking in the woods one day and thinking to myself, because I travel a bunch, and I have traveled a bunch, not as much these days, and I like to stay home a little bit more. But how can I get some amazing percussionists to come here, to collaborate with, to make some cool music, innovative music, and then share it with the community that's here? And and after thinking about that for a few years, I finally got the gumption to go ahead and organize something and call some friends up. And the first few were just like this thing where I just call a bunch of friends, and they came from different parts of the country and beyond. And it's just developed into this beautiful thing where now there's like a great team. I have Rima and Tom on my team, and then 6 other people. Then there's like 25 volunteers, and it's really a nice community thing right now.
You also mentioned something that's kind of interesting. You were saying that this one is just gearing to females and women percussionists. In general, is this a male-dominated field, or are more and more women coming into it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, it was pretty much such a male-dominated thing. You would never see a female drummer. In the conservatory, out of 30 of us who were studying percussion, 2 of them were female. One of my greatest teachers, though, was female, and, I had her for 4 years in college. And then now I know it's like more like 50-50 in there, but, in Asheville, like with my drum classes that I hold, I have drum classes every Wednesday night, and I'd say it's 70% female that come to the classes, and especially hand drums and stuff. And for example, Kasiva, who is coming from Kenya, she's the only professional female percussionist in the country. They had actually banned females from playing drums like when she was a kid, which is just ridiculous. So some of the people we have representing really, really, really are taking it to the next level.
And so that's cool. She had to do this on the side, or without being
she just kept doing it, and now she's in demand. Like, people want her to be on her records and stuff like that. And she's a recording session artist too, and she was really happy to come here and collaborate. She really liked the spirit of what we were doing, so we're really lucky to have her.
River, if anybody wants to get more information, let's talk about 3 things. That one, in terms of the Percussion Festival again this coming weekend.
Yes.
Best bet was the website was what?
AshevilleRhythm.org.
Okay, and that would be information about the upcoming
Yeah,
festival.
information, tickets, any of that stuff.
If people want to find out more about you, either to hear some of your work or get some of your performances or see what you're up and coming, what's their best bet on that?
My website is sharethedrum.com, and I have some educational stuff on there. I have videos. I have a lot of audio stuff on there. So yeah, feel free to dig around.
And also you're on Facebook as well?
Yes.
Okay. And then lastly, I think I may have given the wrong address, but if you'd like to get into a drawing for a chance for a free ticket, courtesy of River and the festival, this upcoming festival, send an email to WPVMFM@AOL.com. I think I forgot to put the @AOL.com. I gave a website, but just hopefully you come out. Whether you win the free ticket or not, it should be a lot of fun. River Guerguerian. I'd like to thank you for being my guest this first half hour on the BLAINESWORLD show.
Oh, thank you so much, and hello to everybody out there. And it's a real privilege to be here this bright early morning.
Okay. And unfortunately, you have to take your drums with you. I was hoping you could just leave them
I
here.
could leave them for a couple hours, man. It's all right.
Thanks, man. That was great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
As River works his way out and takes all his drums with him, it's really tough. Like a little kid, you have to take your toys and leave.
Yeah.
Just leave them here. I just leave quietly. Okay. I'd just like to mention 2 upcoming events hosted that are coming in the Asheville area. One is a special show just announced, Issues with Mike Grell, hosted by Jeff Messer. That will take place Saturday, June 24th at 7:30 p.m. at the Magnetic Theater, 350 Depot Street in Asheville. Iconic comic book creator Mike Grell sits down with host Jeff Messer for an Inside the Actor Studio style interview. And it's being filmed for future release. Should be a lot of fun. For more information, www.themagnetictheater.org. In addition, I'd like to mention an upcoming show called Love Makes a Home Life of Rebecca Boone, wife of Daniel Boone. And that will take place on Saturday, June 30th at 3 p.m. at the Folk Art Center, milepost 382, Blue Ridge Parkway in Asheville. Tickets to that event are rebeccaboone.brownpapertickets.com. And this, you'll hear about Daniel Trek's first trek through the Cumberland Gap is nearing its 250th anniversary. And the play tells the Boone family story through the eyes of his wife, Rebecca. And it's just amazing how much great stuff we have in the Asheville area. And toward that end, I'd like to introduce my second guest, who's responsible for a lot of the great stuff in the Asheville area. And she is the amazing Mandy Bean. Welcome, Mandy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay,
I'm
Mandy.
not close
No,
enough.
you want to go and you want to go over there and you got it, kid.
All right, wiggling. There we go. Oh, that's
okay,
better.
that's perfect. I should mention that Mandy is native of the area. Actually, somebody from Asheville?
Yes, I'm from Weaverville, but yeah, I'm
Native
from. My family's
area.
lived here for 400 years.
And
We're
grew up-
super native.
Grew up on a farm in Weaverville,
Mm-hmm.
and she studied theater education at Appalachian State University, and has been a company member of the Montford Park Players for the last 10 years. And not only has she been a member of the Montford Park Players, but so many other
Yes.
things. You look around and you'll see Mandy either acting or directing or doing something involved in theater. And Mandy, again, the question I always ask, I asked River, I'll ask you, is what made you want to get into theater?
Honestly, when I was really young, I remember watching the Mary Martin Peter Pan, the musical. I had a VHS of that. Nobody in my family does theater, but I remember watching that and just loving it, loving the singing and dancing, and thought, oh, I could do that. And then I didn't really, it was about in middle school when I started seeing more stuff. I was like, no, I really want to do this. And once I did my first show, I was hooked. That was it for me.
Did you ever get to do Peter Pan?
No, I didn't. I worked backstage on Peter Pan once. Did costumes backstage with it, but someday I'm hoping to maybe get to play Mrs. Darling when I'm old enough to be the mom there. Well, I guess I am now.
Now you qualify.
Right?
But that'd be so cool. Or I could see Montford doing that sometime.
Yeah, well, they did a production of Peter Pan last
That's
year,
what I
but it
thought.
wasn't the musical. It was the stage play. It was the J.M. Barry play.
Oh, now I remember. Yeah, I said, whoa.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
But it wasn't what I remember. That threw me a little bit. I kept waiting for the songs.
Right.
There were no.
I
Now
think that's what everyone knows is the musical, and this was just the stage play.
Oh,
So.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, talk then about Montford, because again, in your spare time, and it's amazing that you find spare time, because in addition to everything else, Mandy also is the mother of 2 boys.
Yes.
And so, how do you get involved in Montford?
I first got involved, I auditioned for Christmas Carol a little over 10 years ago. C.J. Brilland was directing, and she cast me in that, and I just kept doing shows. I started watching the shows when I was in college. I would come back, and I would go to the, outdoor theater, and absolutely loved it. And once I auditioned, I just kept auditioning and just kept doing shows. I think that first summer, I did every show that we did that summer.
And we should mention to our listeners, the few who may not be familiar with it, but Montford is just one of the great gifts to the Asheville community,
Oh,
I
yes.
think. You just have to check it out if you've never been there. Describe it.
It's a free outdoor Shakespeare. We don't just do Shakespeare. In fact, this summer, well, I'll talk about it in a minute, but they're doing a production of Robin Hood. which will be cool. But basically, the cornerstone is free outdoor Shakespeare. Our founder, it was really important to Hazel that theater be accessible to everyone. And so she fought to make sure that it stayed free. And all of the productions now, like even the indoor ones, and it's outside. You can bring a picnic. You can bring wine.
Or you can buy it there too.
You can buy
if
it there
want.
too. Yeah, they have concessions. They sell beer and wine there, and mead. I think Fox Hill Metairie. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's just it's community theater, and I think it's really great community theater, in my opinion.
And what's amazing is that for all the productions I've been there and that you have, that so few of them actually get completely canceled because of the weather.
Right.
It's I forget. John told me it was like 10% or something.
Yeah.
Just
I don't know if it's just luck or if we got rained out of our entire tech week for Midsummer Night's Dream, but we have not, knock on wood, we have not yet gotten rained out of a show. So, and even if it's drizzling, even if it's raining a little bit, we'll just hold or just keep playing. So people come and bring their umbrellas and just sit and watch us anyway.
so I've never heard that you can get rained out of a tech week. So what
Yeah.
did you do?
We just, I don't know, we just crossed our fingers. The first run through that my actors had with set, lights, costumes, everything was opening night.
Wow.
Yeah, we kept pushing through and doing as much as we could, and I try not to let it worry me, because at the end of the day, and try not to stress my actors, because at the end of the day, they're all volunteers, and it should be fun. And as nerve-wracking as it was to not get to put all these elements together, I was like, you guys still having fun? Good. Let's just keep going. It'll be fine.
Now, one of the interesting things I find about you, Mandy, is that not only do you direct, but you also act.
I do.
And I always enjoy watching you as an actress. Do you have a preference, acting or directing?
If I had to choose, I would say directing. I really love being on stage, but there's something special about getting to watch the whole thing take shape. And I don't know, there's some, I feel like, not to toot my own horn, but I feel like I have a fairly good eye for seeing stage pictures and stuff. And I really enjoy directing, and I feel like people enjoy working with me. At least that's what I'm told. And I think it's because my biggest focus is that everyone have fun. Like, it's called a play for a reason. They should be playing.
Isn't that a great line, though? You know,
Right.
as opposed to, you mean, so I've never been directed you by you, but so you're not the tyrannical director
I hope not.
that's screaming and yelling and criticizing.
No, there's a part in Midsummer where there's a director of the play within a play, and the actor's so funny, Tony Antonori, I don't know if you know him, but he like really yells at his actors. And one night I was like, I hope that's not me. That's not what I do. But no, I don't think so.
But just one of the things also I think you have a real talent for, and I guess it's one of the important parts about directing is getting the right cast. You know,
it's very important.
I guess you have to just kind of have a feel for that, or you just get experience doing it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest parts of directing, because if you get the cast right, I would say 85% of your job is done. If you get the right people, it kind of directs itself. Kind of takes care of itself. And it's really just kind of going off instinct and going off who reads the best, of course, for the part, but also who reads the best together. Sometimes you might have two actors that could equally play a part, but if the character has to play off of another character, it might depend on who has the best chemistry. And that's always a big factor. And I feel like directing has made me really appreciate how hard it is to cast. And so if I audition for a show now and I don't get cast, I'm just like, you know what? There's so many factors that go into it. I could have done a great job and a lot of times people do a great job and there's not a spot for them in the show. And that's the hard part, is saying no to people.
I always have to sympathize with actors, and I feel bad for them, but they'll complain kind of to me they didn't get a part. You know, they thought they were great, and they may have been, but as you said, there are a lot of great actors also, and a lot of good people in Nashville. Must also be one of the toughest parts of being a director, is having to tell somebody they don't have the job.
Yeah, it's so hard, especially when it's someone you might really want to work with, or someone, a friend of yours, or someone that they had a great audition, but they're not right for that show. And that's probably that's probably the hardest part for me, because in one way, I would love to just everybody in the play, and in another way, when you start casting too many people, even in extra parts, if you have too big of a cast, it becomes unmanageable. And so it's doing what's best for the show. And sometimes you have to tell people no.
One of the great things I think about Montfort, though, is that for the most part, you'll talk about Midsummer in just a second, but they have fairly large shows.
Yes,
And,
a lot of times, yeah.
You were mentioning Peter Pan. It was a big cast.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of nice because it gives a lot of people a chance to be in the show.
Yes.
Your current show, how many people are in it?
19.
Okay, good sized
Yeah,
cast.
it's pretty good size. Yeah, it's not overwhelming, but it's pretty good.
How many people came out for the audition?
About
You know,
I don't remember. I would guess around 30. It wasn't a huge, but I would estimate about 30. So I didn't have to tell too many people no. But sometimes that makes it worse because it's like I can cast everyone except you.
Right.
And again, I had great people that I worked with. I've worked with before. It's like just don't have a spot for you. So, but yeah, it's a good cast size. 19 is manageable and it doesn't overcrowd the dressing rooms too much because we do have a small space back there.
For the benefit of our listeners, talk about some of the folks who are in the show.
Oh, okay. A lot of them are Montfort familiars. David Mykoff, who he's great, isn't he? He's playing Bottom, which is really funny because that's not a part I would have if you know the show. That's a very silly comedic character, and David's a professor at Warren Wilson, and I don't think I would have seen him as that, but he came in an audition and just blew it out of the water. It was hysterical. He does a lot of shows at Montfort. Jason Williams has been with the company for years. He's also our resident lighting designer, and he was the board president for a long time. He's playing Lysander. David Brochar, who runs the beer cart up at the top of the hill, he's in the show. Tony Antonora, I mentioned, he's been doing Montfort for as long as I have. Our first show was together. Travis Kelly, who actually has a radio show here in the evenings on Tuesdays, he's in the show. He's one of the lovers. So there's all kinds of people. Some of them are new. No, Stephanie Nussbaum is brand new to our company. She's playing Hermie, and she's great. Laura Farmer, who's not new, but she's an excellent Helena. And a lot of the young people, you get to see a nice mix because I would say a lot of times with auditions, you get a lot of repeat auditioners. You get people that have been out a lot. But then you get new people sometimes, and the new people are always, it's exciting. And to see people come back. Emily Tucker, who has not done anything with Montfort for a couple of years, she's come back and is playing Titania, and she's fantastic. So,
for the benefit of our listeners who don't know the show, let me put you on the spot and ask you to give me the Reader's Digest version of the show.
It's the hardest show to summarize.
I can imagine.
So much going on. It's a lot of different. Three main plot lines, kind of all running together in the woods. There's the lovers plot line, which two people are in love, and another guy loves the girl, and another girl loves him. So they're all chasing each other through the woods. And then there's the fairy plot line. And the fairies cause mischief. They use a magic potion, basically, to cast a spell on the lovers. And it mistaken identity. It gets them the wrong one. They fall in love with the wrong person. There's hijinks ensue. And then the third main plot line is the Rude Mechanicals, who they steal the show. They're not in much at the beginning, and then at the end, they are just... everyone cracks up. And they are a group of workmen who decide they're going to do a play. And they've never really done a play before, but they're going to do a play, and they're going to do it for the Duke's wedding. And it's really, really funny. One of my favorite lines is about that, talking about the actors, and I think it applies to all actors. But at one point, the Duke says, "The best in this kind are but shadows, and the worst are no worse if imagination amends them." So
it explains it.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, in terms of the appropriateness of the show for all ages.
Yeah, I think so. Shakespeare was kind of the king of dirty jokes, and a lot of people don't realize that. Like, people think, oh, Shakespeare's... No, there's a lot of, in Shakespeare, dirty stuff, but it goes over kids' heads, and there's nothing visually inappropriate. It goes over some adults' heads. Exactly. It goes over a lot of adults' heads, because it's not language that we're used to hearing, so some of the innuendo gets lost. But I took my 4-year-old, and he sat through the whole thing. He was really tired at the end, but I took my 4-year-old, and he really enjoyed it, and he could tell me at the end what his favorite parts were. So we get a lot of kids at Montfort, because the great thing is, if you bring your kids and they get tired or they're not into it, whatever, you can always just pick up and leave because it's outdoors. Nobody's going to notice. So we would rather people come and give it a shot. And if they need to take their kids and leave early, then that's fine.
Well, you said also about Montfort, again, one of the great things, very kid-friendly. You know?
Yeah, the area it's outdoors, they love it, you know. Yeah.
Right. How do you feel about performing outdoors as wearing the acting hat?
Yeah, it can be tough. I love it because I love to be outside, but it's hard to project loud enough. Especially, we've noticed the women have a harder time projecting. I think it's the timbre of our voices. It kind of tends to get it's not that we can't be as loud, but that slightly higher range tends to get lost in the echo of Montfort sometimes. And you have to contend with, if it's raining and you're rehearsing, you have to contend with the rain and the mud. But when you're out there and the moon is shining and the fireflies are in the trees, it's magic. You know, it's wonderful.
So I imagine, too, when you're directing, either you or you send somebody up to the back rows to make sure that everybody can hear?
Yeah, and if we can't, then I will either send somebody down to let them know. During rehearsals, it's easy to just shout down, louder, so-and-so. But during performances, sometimes when people are in the audience, those bodies kind of soak up the sound. So you have to be even louder to get past, especially to get to the people in the back. There's airplanes that fly overhead sometimes that you have to wait for, so it can be a struggle to be heard, but I think it's a good enough space down there. It's designed well enough to where, unless you're very hard of hearing and sitting in the back, you probably are going to hear.
Well, it's interesting, as you're describing it, the folks are mic'd or are not mic'd.
They're not mic'd.
Which is really a credit in terms of acting.
Yeah.
You see almost any local show, they're mic'd and you can hear it. But here, these are folks, I guess, have to really learn to project.
Yeah, they're just using their own instrument. They're using their own voice. And once the detriment about miking people is if the mics go out or if somebody's at a higher level than the others, then suddenly you can't hear, and your ear is so used to the microphone that you can't make up for it. So it's neat to be able to learn to be heard just with your own power, you know.
Also, giving, I guess, credit to your cast, it's really impressive to me that people in general remember dialogue. But to remember dialogue, Shakespeare, that's a step above just regular dialogue.
It is. It's not the way we talk anymore, so it can be. The helpful part is sometimes it does rhyme, but then sometimes that can throw you too. If a word sounds like it should rhyme, but it doesn't in our modern English. Although we're doing this in an Appalachian dialect, which changes the rhyming a bit, but it's a lot. He wrote a lot of words.
And talk a little bit about that, not only the Appalachian dialogue, but even in terms of the costumes and the setting. What was your thinking behind that?
Well, several years ago, I thought, wouldn't it be fun to give Midsummer Night's Dream the same treatment as Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, which is set in like 1930s, late 1930s, South. And more recently, I would read articles saying that they actually think now that the way Elizabethan English sounded when Shakespeare was writing and performing is closer to an Appalachian dialect than to a modern British dialect, because the settlers that came over here and stayed in these areas, they were so isolated that their dialect remained largely unchanged for hundreds of years. So it's closer to that, and they looked at text evidence. There's no recordings, of course, because they didn't record sound until the phonograph, but they've looked at text evidence and tried to piece it together, both from Shakespeare and other writings of the time. And they're fairly certain. If you listen to someone doing OP, original pronunciation, it sounds like a cross between Appalachian English and like how you imagine a pirate talking.
Now,
so it's pretty neat.
In preparing for the show, I'm trying to recall, I think there were film versions of Midsummer Night's Dream.
There are.
That were.
I think there are, yeah.
Did you see any of them?
I did not. Nope.
Interesting.
I've not ever seen a movie of Midsummer Night's Dream. I've been in the show twice. I've done the play within a play more times than I care to count, but I've never seen a movie of Midsummer Night's Dream.
How do you feel about that in general, about if you're going to be in a show or before or after seeing the film?
A lot of people feel really strongly one way or the other. I think that if it's not going to mess you up as an artist whether that's acting or directing. Go for it. Like, because people are like, well, I want it to be original. I want to do my own thing. Well, maybe somebody did something in a film that works really well that you can use. It's okay. It's okay to do what's best for the text, whether or not it was out of your own brain or not. You know, do what's funniest, do what's most dramatic, do what works best. And if you steal that from a movie, I think that's fine, as long as you don't steal word for word every single nuance, you know.
It's interesting you say that because two films are on this week on Turner Classic Movies. Guys and Dolls and Man Who Came to Dinner.
Oh, yeah.
I just sent information about that to all the actors who were in the show over the last couple of years. I thought they might want to see now after the fact.
Right, yeah, because then you go back and think, oh, yeah, I remember, oh, this is different. So, yeah.
Now, talk about different. You mentioned dialect, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, wasn't it you who was in a show at Heart not too long ago with crazy dialogue?
Yes, I was in The Bald Soprano. Yeah, which is very, very absurd.
Mandy, my goodness, you were so good in that.
Thank you.
And talking about, having to memorize stuff, I would imagine it's tough enough to memorize normal dialogue, but what was that like?
Oh, that was a beast. It was a beast to memorize because even Shakespeare, at least you kind of know, it's a plot, it makes sense once you know how Shakespeare's words work. But with that absurdist piece, with The Bald Soprano, it was out of left field. I mean, they were total non sequiturs, and we would get so lost. And luckily, it all came together by the time we were really doing it. But you just basically had to figure out, okay, my next line comes after that word that they say. Doesn't make any sense. But once they say that, then I have to say this. And if somebody else messes up, then it's like, oh, I think I say this now.
Well, that was like, I was completely surprised by that play. It's like you said, the most absurdist thing you'll ever see. But you had such a good cast with you. And I'm watching you in the beginning, and I'm saying, hey, there's Mandy, and that's kind of cool. And she's a normal kind of, you're just
housewifey kind of,
you're just sitting there. It's kind of cool. And then so, whoa, where is this going? I think the cast was so good. You had, who was it? Dakota was in that. But
Dakota Man, Jason Phillips.
Was just so funny
he was
in that.
Hysterical. And Jamie Knox. And Jamie Knox was a late addition. We had someone drop out, and Jamie Knox stepped in and learned her lines just immediately, and she was absolutely fantastic to work with.
And again, in terms of learning lines, in general, I am impressed by you and others who can memorize lines. But that was just a step above, I would think.
It was really hard, I will admit, it's just for all of us, because you're just, there's no sense to it. There's no common thread anywhere. And at the end, we were all just standing up on chairs shouting nonsense at each other, and it was really fun. It was one of the more fun things I think I've ever done.
To put you on the spot, you can say fun, or I'll ask you a favorite. It's almost like asking you which of your children is the favorite, including your husband as well. But
right.
I won't ask you that. But let me ask you in terms of first performing, then we'll talk about directing. Do you have a favorite show you performed in?
I was actually kind of talking about this last night. I think, it's hard because there's a lot of different genres. It could be like favorite musical, but I think playing Emilia in Othello a few years ago was probably, because that was the last show my husband and I got to do together before we had children. Now we have to take turns.
But where was that at?
That was with Montfort. It was at the Masonic Temple.
Right.
But it was with Montfort Park Players, and I was playing Emilia, and Scott, my husband, was playing Iago, and he was playing my husband in the play. And I was pregnant at the time, and he had to kill me on stage. So it was just very, but I feel like that's probably one of the best performances I ever gave.
How about performing with your husband? Good or bad? I mean,
it's
enjoyable?
Great. I love it. I wish we could do more of it. We're waiting till our kids get older and they can, because right now they're so little, we can't afford a babysitter for every night, So we haven't gotten to do a show together in almost 5 years. But we're holding out for when they're bigger, and hopefully we can be on stage together again, because he's an excellent actor to work with, and it's fun to have that shared experience together too.
Now, have you ever directed your husband?
I have, yes. In Richard II, back in 2012, I directed my husband, and he was also very good to work with. That can sometimes be a problem. I had more trouble directing. My best friend, Jason, was also in that play, and I had more trouble directing him because he was the stubborn one. Scott took my direction like a pro.
If not, there's no dinner that night.
Right, exactly. I feel like some people, because you're so comfortable, you might argue more, but no, he's great. He's great to work with. So
you were talking about some of the plays you've been in and directed, and any others? So the one, and that you mentioned you directed that one?
No,
Or
I
the
was- I
perform-
acted in that one, in
that one
Othello,
you
yeah.
acted. And then directing. A
Favorite
play.
directing has to be Richard II. I mean, I'm really happy with this Midsummer Night's Dream we're doing right now. I really have enjoyed it. But that Richard II that we did 6 years ago, I just feel like that was the. I'm hoping there's always room for improvement, but I feel like that was the best thing I've ever done. I was so proud of that show. I would love to remount it today.
And what makes it the best, in your opinion?
I think the cast that I had was really great. They all came together and just did their jobs beautifully. The costumes, Renee Handley did my costuming, and we did steampunk style. It was just beautiful. Everything, there was just really cool little effects. There was a part where, I know you know Darren Marshall. Darren broke someone's neck on stage, and Caitlin Lane was downstairs crushing an empty water bottle to make the sound effect, and every night the audience went, ooh, because it sounded so real.
And it has to be on time, too.
Exactly. Oh, she would be like crouched below watching through the slats of the floorboards, waiting for him to do it, and then it was so cool.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned, and I don't know her real well, but you mentioned Caitlin, and it's amazing, too, how important the behind-the-scenes people
yes, the
are.
stage managers.
You don't realize, but not only stage managers, people just see the actors, and I'm guilty of this sometimes too. I always give credit to the actors.
Right.
I try to give credit to the director, then even to the person who wrote the play. But there's so many people behind the scenes that make
Yes.
up the play. And just talk a little bit about that, at least for Midsummer,
Oh,
in
there's-
terms of who else is helping with the
We
play.
had a great team for Midsummer. Dakota Mann was my stage manager and also assistant director. And Dakota's such a hard worker. He comes in and builds things and pulls long hours.
Oh, so the bad thing, so I won't get to see him if I can get there. He's not in the show.
Right, he's not in the show.
Oh.
Right, exactly. In fact, he's doing another show at Hart now. So Hannah Williams-Beaver has taken over. She's running the show. She was also the costumer. Did a beautiful job. Sophie Marie Stanley, I just have to praise. She was my set designer. And Sophie, I said to someone recently, I never want to do another show without Sophie. She made this beautiful, beautiful set and was, there during the day and between work, stapling things to the walls and putting things up.
And
And
by the way, something I'm always impressed with at Montfort are the stages. For this outdoor setting, they're just really cool, and they look
Yeah.
different each time you see a show.
yeah.
You know,
And
so-
it's so easy to fall into the trap of just using the same thing. And Sophie really transformed the stage for Midsummer. I love it. In fact, we're offering to let them use, if they want to keep any of the woodland stuff for Robin Hood. It's like, you're in the woods, just keep all this.
Oh.
We don't have to tear as much down. But yeah, they were all great. And then my lighting designer was my husband. I mean, my sound designer was my husband, which is easy because we can be at home and I'd be like, no, I want it to sound like this. And Jason was my lighting designer, and he's also one of the stars of the show. So that was double duty on his part there.
And it's what's I find incredible, why I love watching theater, is that so many people are important to it. Again, and they all bring it
Absolutely.
together. Describe, if you would, we just have a couple minutes left, what happens when they come to a show at Montfort if they've never been there?
Well, the biggest thing is people sometimes don't know how to find it. It is a little bit of a hidden gem. You go down the hill and you're like, this is a baseball field. I came to a theater, but you see a baseball field. You have to keep going. You walk over the hill, and you're just greeted by this beautiful stage. There are chairs available for rental, or you can bring your own, or you can just sit on the tiers. You can bring food. You can bring anything to drink. There's also concessions and food there. And generally, there's no tickets. You just park your car, walk on up. I suggest getting there early because there's a crowd. And at the intermission, the actors come through with their hats, and if you enjoy the show, you put a donation in the hat. And that's how we run. We run off donations. It's very, very important to us. So
That's nice, too, I think, and this is important to me for some reason, but I like it. Afterward, the actors come out, too.
They do, and we are one of the few places that the actors usually come out in costume. There's very little fourth wall, which not everyone does. It's a choice. It's up to the actors. Some of them don't come out, but usually they take their bows, they exit the stage, and they come right on out, and you can meet them in costume.
And Mandy, if anybody wants to find out more about Midsummer Night's Dream or upcoming Robin Hood's going to be a lot of fun as well, best bet is the website, which is what?
MontfortParkPlayers.org, or also our Facebook page, Montfort Park Players. The Facebook page, I think, is updated more regularly, so that's a really good place to find information as well.
Okay, I'd like to thank you, Mandy, for being my guest this second half hour on the BLAINESWORLD Show,
Thank you.
and for all the great work you do in the Asheville area. Also to River Guerguerian, my first guest, and to Amy Prisnash, my producer, and to Zuzu Welsh, who provided the music you heard at the beginning of the show, you'll now be hearing at the end. I look forward to having you join me next Wednesday at 9 a.m. here on the new WPVM LP in Asheville, North Carolina. You can also listen online at WPVMFM.org or go to WPVM's Facebook page and go to the video section, and you'll find the Blaine's World show. You can see this show or any other shows we've done in the past. Anyway, thanks for listening, and we hope to see you next week.